Happy Thursday and welcome to a special live edition of Husker Online Live. We are out here. Appreciate everybody coming out, and we'll be here for the next hour. And we did one of these live shows last time at the Zipline Brewery in South Lincoln. We learned real quickly we need more space. So we're very grateful to Zipline, our host, our title sponsor of tonight's show, for hosting the event. Great specials here on hand tonight. Prizes, $3 beers, $6 taco specials. So thank you, everybody. And you're on camera, by the way. We've got a crowd camera, so say hello to your friends as you can see yourself on camera here on the show. But guys, we're going to keep it normal format. I want to go opening headlines because we're here on the bye week. Nebraska is 5-1. They haven't been in a position like this really in a number of years, where you feel pretty good about things moving forward, but obviously we know there's some tough roads ahead. But at 5-1, there's been some good, there's been some questions, but I think Nebraska is like a lot of teams right now, Sip, in college football.
Oh yeah, I mean, find me a team that doesn't have flaws. Not named Texas. Can you guys handle that? Texas probably has some. Oh yeah, put the horns down. But I mean, that's the world we're in. So I know I know what we do. I think every fan base does it. They fixate on the issues, and they don't necessarily enjoy everything that's going on. But enjoy 5-1, because it could easily be 6-0. And I love to hear Rule. I love to hear Matt Rule say that loss to Illinois keeps him up at night. I don't wish ill on him. I want him to get his sleep, but he cares. He cares at a high level, and I love that.
Yeah, I think you gotta kind of make it where you take a Rule approach, where you have a high standard. You focus on keeping a high level of expectations of what you want a program to be about, but then you also don't go past that point to where you overlook all the positives that's going on within your program right now. Sure, Nebraska is a flawed team, but they're doing a lot of things well. Their defense is playing at an extremely high level right now. Their quarterback, for a true freshman, is one of the best freshman quarterbacks in the country. Their wide receivers are making plays on the perimeter like we have not seen Nebraska wide receivers make in a long time. So, I mean, there's a foundation that they're building right now that, while it's still very much a work in progress, as Matt Rule said, everybody wants to talk about what Nebraska isn't. Let's talk about what they are right now.
Yeah. Well, guys, they come back after the bye at Indiana. It's probably going to be the biggest home game Indiana's hosted in a number of years. They're 6-0. They're the first team in the Big Ten to reach bowl eligibility. Kirk, and I say his name wrong every time, Cignetti. Michael Severe did a trick on me. He said that they're using all my screw-ups of his name as motivation. And there's some Indiana fan taking what I'm saying and like sending it to their team to motivate. I hope that's not true, but I think it's getting that game at 11 out there as a road team, noon local time. I think that's a break for Nebraska. I think as a road team, you want to play at noon versus having to wait around all day playing at night in a raucous environment. And I like that Nebraska goes out there as an underdog. I think it would have a different feel. Let's say Indiana's 4-2, even 5-1, where somebody just beat them. You feel a little bit more comfortable. But now you're a little stressed going out there. Like, Indiana's ranked. This is an opportunity for Nebraska to really, vault this season another level.
Yeah, I mean, enjoy the tension. I love the tension. I mean, I love covering these games that go into the fourth quarter. I mean, you guys know, look at me, how old I am. You guys, and a lot of you are my age-ish. You remember when you would go to games and you knew the outcome. I mean, 6 or 7 or 8 games a year. Young people have no idea what I'm talking about. But you would go, I would go to the games and walk over there wondering what walk-on or third-string player I'd be writing about, because he's going to get in the second half when Nebraska's up 45. Those days might be over, which is fine with me. I like going over on Saturdays not knowing what's going to happen. And in a lot of these games, or most of them, probably maybe all of them down the stretch, I'd even say Ohio State, there's a chance that game could go into the fourth quarter. So, I mean, I love it. I think it's great, and that's the way it's going to be. I don't think Nebraska will get to a point where they're winning by 40 points 7 times a year, because hardly anybody's doing that.
Like what Sean said, what an opportunity next Saturday is going to be. Big noon kickoff. It's an undefeated Indiana team. They're getting all the love nationally. Cignetti's been talking about National Coach of the Year, talking about all these things that Indiana is, whereas Nebraska's just kind of an also ring. at 5-1, just because they lost one game to a ranked team in overtime by missing a couple plays. So like they have every chance right now to change the narrative nationally about what kind of team they actually are and how much of a competitor they are in the Big Ten Conference. So, like you said, pressure is privilege. If you're Nebraska, you embrace every bit of this.
And Robin brought his A game, Sean.
Robin brought it. Did you bring the Harley? That's what people want to know.
No, I did not bring my Harley.
A lot of this. I mean, simple. We promoted 5-inch shorts and a Harley Davidson.
He wore jeans. No
Created a monster, Sean. You know how many people ask me why I'm not wearing my shorts? With the 5. I don't even know what a 5.
I was with you when you bought them at Target.
You bought them.
And it was not pretty when we tried them on. Well, thank you again for joining us here at Husker Online Postgame Live.
What's going down?
We need to turn you guys down a little bit because I think we're getting a little feedback on you guys, but I'm okay on my bringing the heat. Robin brought the thunder. But thank you again to everybody for joining us here at Zipline. We are going to talk offensive storylines, defensive storylines, mailbag, some Big Ten talk as well. But it is the bye week. It's a 2 bye week year. And people ask, why is that? Why are there 2 bye weeks? Well, because it's the number of Saturdays between Labor Day and Thanksgiving. So some years there's 13. This is one of the years where there's 14. So that is why there are 2 bye weeks. It's not like, hey, we're going to be nice and give every team an extra week off. That is why there are 2 bye weeks this year. But I do think going forward in college football, there is a push to have 2 bye weeks every year. I think it is kind of needed for a lot of programs to have these 2 bye weeks. But Nebraska did practice this week, 3 days, and knowing Coach Rule Sip, they were probably pretty physical practices.
Yeah, I mean, they tackled to the ground before the last game. I think they went 2 days of tackling, which is almost unheard of. But he's old school. What were they going to practice on Friday, Sean?
No, they were Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then there's no recruiting this week either because you're limited on your days. I mean, that's one thing too. Normally on a bye week, you're going to go out and you're going to do a lot of recruiting and go out places, but you only get 33 total days for your 11 coaches. So that's 3 coaches per coach, 3 days per coach that can go out on the road and do recruiting. Nebraska's already used about 8 of those days, and they want to use the remainder of them more on that later November bye week, which is closer to signing day. It's going to be a completely different calendar this year. In the month of December, you will not see the coaches going out for these in-home visits like we've been grown to see in the past. The signing day is now the first Wednesday in December this year as well. So it's going to be a different setup as they adjust this college football calendar to the new college football playoff, which is going to begin earlier in December.
I think if you're Nebraska too, like there's the downside of not having a bye week for your first 6 weeks of the season. I think they were one of the last teams in the Big Ten to have their bye week, but now look at it. They got 2 bye weeks over the final 6. And so while every other teams are going to be grinding through the wear and tear of that late stretch of the season, Nebraska got 2 off weeks. So there's a trade-off there. And Nebraska kept their head very much above water to where they're sitting in a good spot. And now they're going to be, I guess, as relatively rested as any team in their conference.
Yeah, there was work to do though this week, and I will tell you guys I think that, I mean, they obviously right away got on the long snapping issue. They attacked it. I know that.
I got a crowd applause there.
Yeah, go ahead. I need some applause. They attacked it, and I would venture to say I don't think it'll be a problem going forward. That they addressed some things early this week on special teams in general that were necessary. Now you would probably say the Q&A format, why did they wait? I don't know. I don't know. Coaches are flawed human beings like the rest of us. But I think they'll get a lot of it fixed. I'd be surprised if there are significant issues going forward. I would.
Do you think that it was
only to that
a mental issue? Like, I guess what could they do in an off week to fix something that they probably would have liked to have fixed weeks earlier?
Well, I guess I'm talking about mainly coverage type stuff.
Okay.
And getting
like with the protection.
Getting punt block. I don't think you'll see another punt block is what I'm getting at.
Gotcha.
That's what I'm getting at.
I hope not.
Yeah, I don't think you will. I think there'd be big trouble if there's one more blocked. And I would guess there won't be another one blocked because of the way they're changing protection. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, well, before we move it into offensive storylines here for Nebraska, thank you again for joining us here at Zipline in Fallbrook for Husker Online Live. We're brought to you by Eller Brock Norris. They've been helping Nebraska business owners protect their purpose for over 120 years with risk management solutions built for local businesses. Eller Brock Norris partners with you on commercial insurance, group benefits, business exit planning, safety, and more. Start thinking long-term with your business and create a risk management strategy to protect it. Are your employee benefit costs going through the roof? Talk to Eller Brock. Workplace injuries skyrocketing your workers' compensation costs? Talk to Eller Brock. Hoping to retire in the next 10 years and sell the business to family, key employees, or even a friendly competitor? Talk to Eller Brock. Eller Brock Norris is helping protect your purpose, whether it's your business and the employees in it, your life outside of work, or your future retirement goals. Head to ellerbrock-norris.com/HuskerOnline today to get your free risk evaluation. Thank you to Eller Brock Norris for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online live show out here at Zipline. All right, let's get into the offensive storylines for Nebraska. I want to start right away with turnovers because I think when you evaluate this team at the midway poll, Nebraska is +6 in turnover margin. A year ago at this very time, they were -7. So we've seen an improvement of 13 on the margin for Nebraska turnovers. They've lost just 1 fumble. They've had 3 interceptions. So just 4 total offensive turnovers. I mean, that was basically a half of football for Nebraska last year at times.
Go ahead, Bob. You're not kidding. Yeah, and that fumble came in the very first game off Dante Dowdell on one of the very first drives of the game. Since then, they've taken care of the football. Now, Dylan Raiola did drop 2 fumbles that he recovered, but his point remains, they're not giving the ball away. And then the interceptions, really last week was the first bad interception he's had. The other 2 were the receivers didn't make a play on the ball, got taken away from him. So from that standpoint, you're rolling a true freshman out there. You got a whole new, receiving core and just these different skill players out there. And they're protecting the ball at this level is a huge reason why they're 5-1 right now. They do not beat Rutgers if they have the same turnover liability they did here.
+6 is amazing, considering where Nebraska's been in the turnover category for years and years and years. There have been studies done on it, and sometimes I just say, you can do all the studies you want. Sometimes it's just a product. You're not a very good football team if you're turning it over a lot. Just the way it is. They're a better team now, but it was emphasized. Not that it's not always emphasized, but I think they went about it a little bit differently. They hammered it home, and it's worked. And I don't think it'll change, but +6 is a dream. I can't even. It's hard to fathom, given what we've seen in recent years, and not recent years, for years and years.
Yeah, I think Dylan is the key. When you look at what Dylan has done, I mean, he really takes care of the football at such a high level. You rarely see him make a mistake. I think the play against Rutgers was a rare moment. The snap was high. It was an RPO. The linebacker dropped back, and he threw the interception in that situation. But for us to only be talking about that one time in the 6th game of the year for a true freshman, to not have snap issues, fumble issues, we've seen it all. The way Nebraska's turned it over the last several years, and Dylan Raiola has kind of stabilized that. And you can play mediocre football at times and win a lot of games if you don't turn it over. And I think Nebraska has proven that. They played pretty mediocre and won at Purdue. Guess what? They won the turnover margin. They played fairly mediocre, if not poor, in the second half, and they won the turnover margin. So I do think it has been a big part of this 5-1 start.
And so you and I were talking during the game. It's like you almost lose perspective of what you're working with here, where you're kind of criticizing Dylan for looking like a true freshman after 6 games. You kind of got to appreciate what you have there with a kid that is that far advanced to where he finally has a bad game, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what's going on here? He's not playing at an all Big Ten level. Like that, I think, shows you just the ceiling that he has. And as long as he continues to take care of the football and make smart decisions, that kid's going to skyrocket.
Yeah, I mean, he won't have many downs. I mean, he's like this. He's very flatline. His dad likes to say Dylan has no pulse. I mean, he doesn't get nervous. He wasn't nervous in his first road game. He wasn't nervous in his first home game. He's dialed in. I mean, he's excited, but like his dad will just text, the kid has no pulse. And so I don't think there'll be wild swings. And let's face it, going forward, I think the 2 biggest reasons to be optimistic are the defense and Dylan Raiola. I mean, and let's face it, Indiana hasn't seen a defense like Nebraska's, nor have they seen a quarterback like Nebraska's. So we'll see what Signetti has there.
I mean, as far as concerns, the things that really are on my mind, number one, offensive line, just the ability to play consistent physical football up front to get the early rundown yardage they need. And is it an O-line issue or is it a back issue? I think you could argue at times it's one or the other. Sometimes the hole's there, the back doesn't see it. Then at wide receiver, do Banks and Naor have the separation to get open in these bigger games down the stretch? They're bigger physical bodies, but can they create the separation, especially on these obvious passing downs where, they're not going to be necessarily that wide open, and Dylan's got to get it in a tight window. So those are my concerns here at the midway point, guys.
With the offensive line, and I'm sure everyone here wants to know, what do you think Mike Mazuka's situation is? Does he worked his way back in as that jumbo tight end against Rutgers, and by no coincidence, they were moving the football at will on the ground. Do you think that tide has settled a little bit and he moves back into the starting lineup?
It's really hard to say.
I think it's day to day.
Yeah, it's disciplinary. So it's hard. He's got to prove himself in that regard day to day. I'll tell you what. There's some concerns I have, but there are some other things we have to point out, which we haven't even mentioned. They don't drop the ball anymore. There's no drops.
There's been like one or two drops all year.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that how well those guys are coached up. We just stop seeing drops. The next drop we'll see, we'll be like, wow, that hasn't happened. My biggest concern is the offensive line and the lack. They don't move the line of scrimmage very often,
Especially late in games.
right? I got used to, as an older guy, seeing the line of scrimmage move. I mean, you can see it from the press box, literally move, and now you seldom see it. So that's still my biggest concern, is getting a consistent push up front so you can have a running back run game that takes pressure off of them.
And with that too, though, those backs need to start making guys miss. Like the one-on-one situations. Go back to the play against Rutgers where Dowdell got through and he had one man to beat. Now the guy had an angle, but that's a play that if you want to take a 12-yard game and make it 50 or 90 for a touchdown, the guy's got to make a play. So it's on the old line to create the holes, but Matt Rule has talked about this at length, that those backs need to make guys miss at the second level. You need to stop hitting singles and doubles and start hitting home runs.
And you talked about drops. There's been just 2 drops all year for Nebraska, which is an amazing number when you break that down. We've had a drop from Bedoni and a drop from Naor, and that's it. So, I mean, for 6 games of football, that is a remarkable
beautiful
number.
Stat.
There's been 168 targeted throws, just 2 drops.
It's amazing. It's good coaching. I mean, it really is. I
think there's a reason the quarterback's putting the ball.
That helps.
On time.
Yeah, it's not all Dylan.
When you run
plays, catching the ball too, Sean.
But when you run plays out of rhythm and you're trying to create and improvise, drops happen on those plays.
Right.
But when you actually run plays on time, you get the ball out in 2 seconds, that's when guys are going to catch the ball. But when the quarterback's scrambling around trying to make a play and the receiver doesn't really know what's happening, that's where we've seen a lot of drops over the years.
Veteran receivers help with that too. They know how to get and find the hole in the zone. They know how to finish the play.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us out here. We are live at Zipline in Fallbrook. We got a capacity crowd. Let's see the crowd. Megan, show us that crowd. We got a big crowd out here tonight as packed it in, and we got more space. This has been, I mean, I think all of us were a little overwhelmed, guys, from the first show. We told it, like, we're expecting a good crowd, but I don't think anybody thought 300 people were showing up there.
Yeah, I got a little tight in there, and the beer line was out the door. So this is a much more convenient setup. Right?
Yeah, there's one thing you don't mess with football. You don't mess with their beer.
Everyone's in a better mood. They have easy access to beer.
So we're rolling tonight. We're out here at Zipline for a special mid-season live review. We're also brought to you by CHI Health here in Lincoln. They are offering drive-up care right now. It is that time of year to get your flu vaccine without leaving your car. It's so easy. You can get COVID tests, strep tests, whatever kind of test you need. CHI can provide that service to you at the comfort of your own vehicle. In Lincoln, drive-up care is offered at the Family Health Center at 40th and Yankee Hill at the CHI Clinic, and they have multiple other clinics around Nebraska. For a location near you, visit chihealth.com/family health center. Now is the time to get your flu shots, and you can get that signed up right on the CHI's website. Pick your location, the time you want to do it, wherever you want to go. That's at chihealth.com/flu, and they'll do it right in the parking lot, right in your car, and you're on your way with whatever you got to get done for the rest of the day. Thank you again to CHI Health for sponsoring us here out at Zipline and our special Husker Online live show. All right, Robin, let's talk defense, because I think that Illinois game and even the Northern Iowa game to an extent, I think we all had some minor alarm bells the way they got pushed back. But give Tony White credit. He's kind of retooled what they're doing. And you heard Matt Rule say he retooled the scheme last week against Rutgers. They added more beef at the line of scrimmage to match up with what Rutgers was doing, and Rutgers had no answer.
Oh, no. I mean, it was an amazing game for the defense. And Sean, I'm glad you mentioned that Northern Iowa, Illinois 2-game part of the season, because I was really heartened to hear Todd Robinson say they were disgusted and kind of embarrassed by the way they played against Illinois. Now, I don't think it was that bad, but to hear him talk like that, just it illustrates the standards this group feels they've reached. They went into overtime 24-24. That's in no way a disaster. But against Purdue and against Rutgers, you saw more of what you expected from that group. And it's a really good group. It doesn't mean they're going to shut out Indiana. They're not going to shut out Ohio State. Those teams are going to put numbers up against anybody. But Nebraska's going to be in every game because of them. They'll be in. There's no doubt in my mind they'll be in the Indiana game because of the defense. I think the defense is going to get better. I think we've seen it. I don't think it's hit its apex. I think it probably was hitting on all cylinders against Rutgers. But what I'm talking about is if Tommy Hill gets healthy, they're not taking Sierra Wright off the field. Now you have two corners out there at that point that will take you back to 2009, 2010 Delaney teams. I mean, these are high
That's
level.
Uma Kamara,
Yeah.
Dennard.
Yeah, and Alfonso Dennard, Prince Ama Kamara. Those guys were high level.
By the way, Nebraska's last first-round draft pick.
Yeah, 2011. That's right. So I think the defense is trending up. I think it could get better. And it's going to need to, because Ohio State and USC are super fast, great offensive minds on the sidelines. But Nebraska's got, they'll be ready to roll.
It's really intriguing too, just because of the personnel that's seemingly being added every week. When you get Javen Wright back in the mix, you get Tommy Hill back in the mix, you get the evolution of Sierra Wright. You have the young defensive linemen that are starting to really step up. James Williams, 4 sacks in 2 games. Like, they're constantly evolving, where you have your core guys, you have your Robinson, Putnick, Bullock, and then the guys in the secondary. But it seems like every week there's somebody else that steps up and has an elite level game. So that picture continues to build, and those young guys that are starting to show flashes become consistent producers. All of a sudden, you got something serious to work with.
Yeah, there's so many you don't even mention. A guy like Vincent Shavers, who played 25-plus snaps the other day. Bayer's played at a high. Makai Bayer's playing at a high level.
Yeah.
They're really strong at all 3 levels.
So what do you think they're going to do with that secondary spot? You talked about 2 starter level cornerbacks. What about their single-digit black shirt veteran starting cornerback Marquise Buford? What about their safety Malcolm Hartzog? What do you think happened?
Move Buford into the slot where Hartzog is. Put Sierra Wright where Buford was on an outside corner. Have Tommy Hill at corner, and then now Malcolm Hartzog would be. His contributions would be diminished, but he could still be a part of it. You're still going to need him.
So they don't rotate much at all in the secondary.
They
In
don't.
fact, I think the Rutgers game, beyond the start, like the 6th guy played like six
snaps.
Yeah, so maybe now that will allow them to rotate a little bit more. That you have an additional starter level player that you can give those guys a break and keep that secondary fresh the same way they do the defensive line.
Aren't the metrics pretty self-explanatory, though? Marquise Buford makes the most sense to move in, and Harkstad could probably be the guy off the bench. I mean, if you're being realistic with what we've seen and the numbers and the analytics, that is the group they're going to go with, in my opinion. I think you will see Hill, as long as he's healthy, and that's the key. I mean, they thought Hill could be on the field the last week or two, and he's not been able to get out there.
I just got to wonder if they were saving him for the second half. I mean, do you need him against Rutgers? You know, like the passing attacks they're going to see going forward, I think, are a much more daunting challenge. They wanted to make sure that he was healthy. But his injury, it's a pain tolerance deal. And with that plantar fasciitis, you just want to make sure that he's as ready to go as possible for these extremely significant jumps in passing games they're going to face.
You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Thank you for joining us. We're out at Zipline in Fallbrook for a special live mid-season review. We have a full house. And guys, you know, we've done 2 of these now, and I think our plan is to ideally do maybe 4 a year. We might want to do an end of the season show, and then probably like a spring game show, the week of the spring game. So that is, we don't want to do them every week. That's a lot for you and us to set up and do one every week. But I think there's a place to do about 3 or 4 of these a year, and I think we found the right host. Zipline's been wonderful hosting these venues, and the crowds have showed up. So we're very, very appreciative of everybody for showing up. Before we bring in Abby Barmore and take, do we have mailbag questions? That's the question. Do we have some mailbag questions, Abby?
Yeah, we definitely have mailbag questions.
Good. All right. Well, we'll have Abby join us here in the mailbag in just a second. But before we get to that, Husker Online Live, we're brought to you by Nebraska Synthetic Greens. We've told you so much about Nebraska Synthetic Greens, and they come in, what they do is they put in custom golf greens in your backyard, your playground, whatever you want to put green on, they do. But something else that they have access to, we've got a lot of golfers that listen to our show that are familiar with the Landmark Golf Club, and they begin releasing their tee times on December 31st at 8 a.m. They have 11,000 public tee times they release, and they sell out in 2.5 hours. Well, Nebraska Synthetic Greens has an Airbnb called the Hubbard Hideaway, and they want to promote that as well. That if you are one of the lucky people that get one of those tee times at the Landmark Golf Club, you will be able to. You need a place to stay, obviously. The Hubbard Hideaway, right by the Landmark Golf Club, is an Airbnb that our friends at Nebraska Synthetic Greens own, and it is available to lease out. So when you get online and start thinking about planning that trip to the Landmark Golf Club and get those tee times that book up in 2.5 hours, 11,000 tee times in 2.5 hours. Think about that. They have you covered. So thank you to Nebraska Synthetic Greens for sponsoring us here on Husker Online Live. All right, let's bring in Abby Barmore. Let's welcome Abby Barmore to Zipline. Abby's got, one thing we've learned doing these shows, Abby's got a lot of fans.
Yes, a bigger cheer than he was.
Well, Abby,
I interact with the crowd. I'm out there getting the mailbag questions.
did you get a zip line, Abby? That's the most important
I
question.
did. I had a zip line. I finished it.
All right.
You're way less obnoxious than us.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we do a mailbag for these shows, but we do it out here at the venue. And obviously, Abby, you picked up some. Where are you starting us off at?
Yeah, so I walked around. I got some questions. So our first one is, now that we're 6 games in, how many more games do you think Nebraska will win?
I mean, I think minimum is 2, maximum is 4. I don't know if does anybody see a 5-1?
You're a good spokesman, Sean.
I'm not running for office, but I don't see a 5-1. If I'm being real, I mean, I hope they can get 3. I hope they can get to 8 and 4.
That'd be great.
I think 9 is there, but I'll say 8 today.
So going into the season, I said 7-5. I guess out of
It's a safe place.
yeah, just play it there. But the more and more I watch them, especially when they play defense the way they did the other day, and the way they protected the ball, if they can just get that running game going to where they're not just going totally into a shell in the fourth quarter, I think 8 wins is very much in their own possibility. And if these 50-50 games against Indiana, I mean, like, look at some of these games. USC all of a sudden doesn't look all that unbeatable. Wisconsin's a flawed team. Iowa's a flawed team. So, like, there's opportunity abound. If Nebraska plays to its potential, maybe outside of Ohio State, and even then, Zip, like, I agree with you. I don't know if that's like just some unwinnable game.
No,
It's
I
going to
don't
be
see
extremely
it.
difficult. but they have the chance to go far above the 7-5 I predicted.
I mean, it does. Certain games impact the way you look at the rest of the season, and Indiana's a big one. If they get to 6-1, then you start thinking about 8 or 9. I mean, you really start thinking about 8 or 9 if they're able to beat Indiana, and it will be a close game. I mean, it'll be a game that probably goes to the final few possessions, and you're just gonna have to make some plays at the end. And I think it'll be that type of game. But if they get to 6-1, then 9 looks very possible because Wisconsin's eminently beatable. Iowa's very beatable. UCLA, you should win. That's 9. I mean, so it could get really interesting. Again, a lot of it just depends. You go step by step. I looked at the season a little differently after Nebraska beat Rutgers. If they lose that game, then it gets a little tense. And I'm going to tell you something. You could feel the tension that week from Nebraska's team, from the coaches. It was not. It wasn't lighthearted. There's nothing lighthearted about it. It was a big game for them, and they got the win. Now let's see what happens.
All right, Abby, where are you going next?
If you had to choose one player on offense and defense to be more involved, who would you pick?
I'm gonna take Sipple's guy, Carter Nelson.
Oh yeah, thanks, John.
I know Sipple is the unofficial president of the Carter Nelson fan club.
I am. I'm bashing too. I'll take that role. He's a big time player. Big time player.
But I like Carter Nelson as a guy on offense that should get more touches. I mean, that's the logical one. I don't know if I even have. I mean, Ja'Cory Barney, you can't get him enough touches.
Yeah, he's been heavily involved to begin with. I would probably go. So I'm going to stick with the running game. I want to see Dante Dowdell emerge as that lead dog, workhorse running back that's getting 20, 25 carries a game, getting 100 yards. Like we haven't seen that from him. We've seen flashes, but for them to really take that next step and win these types of games that we're talking about in November, they need to be able to run the football. And I think Dante Dowdell is the complete package out of that group that has the best chance to be able to do that.
Oh, Jalen Lloyd, that's a good one. Carter, our young intern, is helping me out. I was going to say Fedoni, but Jalen Lloyd's a good one. I'd like to see that speed flash a little bit more and make a little more. I mean, Nebraska needs big plays. That's becoming apparent. Everybody needs them. Those chunk plays that get you down the field. Nebraska needs those. Jalen Lloyd can supply them. Carter, that's a good one. I wanted to say Fedoni. I didn't think Fedoni would be the 5th leading receiver on the team. I thought he'd be higher than that at the halfway point. So I'd like to see Fedoni a little bit more, but Jalen Lloyd, too, would be a good one.
By the way, guys, we're pushing about 900 live viewers.
Good God.
So we got hundreds here in the bar, 900 live online. So and we know we're playing with the audio, guys. We get it. We're trying to entertain the crowd and the YouTube audience at once. So it's kind of a moving around of the sound, but we're doing our best, and we're having a lot of fun doing the show. So thank you again to everyone on defense. Is there anybody else that you want to?
Defense?
Anybody on defense that?
Want to see more?
I mean, could
Jamin Wright.
Shavers, huh?
Shavers, that's a good one.
I heard Shavers' name.
Yeah.
Shavers held up really well.
Name a linebacker.
I mean, Sear Wright, I don't think you can't take him off the field. I mean, I think in terms of impact players, he's made as many impactful plays as anybody in about half the sample size.
Yeah. Sierra Wright isn't going away. When Tommy comes back, you're not going to see Sierra go to the sideline. He'll be a starter.
I think Cam Lenhart. Change my name. Cam Lenhart. He is too good, too athletic, too skilled to have the limited role in production that he's had thus far. Nebraska needs one of those other defensive linemen. Jamari Butler's been banged up, and so his snaps have been limited. They have played Cam Lenhart quite a bit, and we just haven't gotten really anything out of him. He can elevate his game. That's going to do a whole bunch of good defensive.
It just hasn't happened for Cam Lenhart. I don't know what the deal is.
Yeah, he got hurt last year, and then just hasn't been the same guy since. Yeah,
Elijah Judy's played well this year. That's an year. All right, Abby, what do you got next?
Next one. Which player or position group can benefit the most from a bye week?
I mean, you got to go to special team. I'd say long snapper. They got to get mentally right. Both of them.
Is 2 weeks enough time to have a tryout?
No, probably. I think those guys can get right. I think most of it's mental. It's mental. It's like a free throw shooter who somehow loses his way. A guy who gets a golfer who gets the yips on the green. Here's the thing, Camden Kentucky was fine in the spring. He's a junior. He was Ortiz's backup. They like him a lot. Fine in the spring, fine in August, no problems. They have their long snapper. And then all of a sudden on Colorado week, something was wrong. I mean, something went wrong. And then so Aiden Flagey came into the picture, but he struggled a little bit. There's no real reason why it shouldn't be okay. It's just not. You say that about free throw shooters. Sometimes you're just like, how do you miss 6 straight? It doesn't make any sense, but it happens.
So all the things you said, and I'm going to apply it to kicker, John Holt, because I don't know when Tristan Albano is going to come back. Right now, he's dealing with some type of injury that could potentially shelve him. Like he could be a redshirt guy this year. So
He's played in 3 games.
That means John Holt is going to be your kicker. And we're talking about winning these toss-up games. They need to be able to execute a simple 30-yard field goal. Right now, you're holding your breath from start to finish for that entire operation. So Matt Rule has insisted that John Holt has all the talent in the world. So if it's between the years, maybe a bye week gives him some time to take a step back and figure it out.
And there can't be a team in America that's had more issues with 35-yard on infield goals. I mean, the Colorado game they missed. People forget that they missed one in the first half that was like 30 yards in that game.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's not for lack of leg strength. John Holt, when you watch him, if you guys watch him in warm-ups, he can boom him. He's got a big-time leg. That's not the issue. It's must be a timing issue, might be a little nervous, but a lot of it's just the operations imperfect.
All right, Abby, what do you got next?
How does Nebraska's offense stack up against Indiana's defense?
I haven't done full scout on Indiana's defense. The only thing I know is they're really deficient in the secondary. A couple coaches have told me that, which is good. That's good news for Nebraska. They can exploit that. I don't know how their front 7 is.
They're thin on the D-line.
That's good
They've got
news.
decent starters, but if they get to their backups, they're in trouble.
Thin on the D-line and deficient in the secondary is good news.
My question is, what good offenses has Indiana played?
No.
And would you label Nebraska a good offense? I mean, but have they seen a quarterback like Dylan Raiola? I don't think they have.
No, they haven't.
Have they seen
they haven't.
a line of scrimmage like Nebraska's on defense? No. So I do think there are some advantages for Nebraska going out there. And a lot of those players have never played in a big game at Indiana. Big noon kickoff, 11 a.m., homecoming. It's
All
going
the pressure's on them.
there's not a lot of, Signetti has had experience, and he's won games in his career, but there's not a lot of experience in that locker room with a game like this. And Nebraska, fortunately, they've lost a lot of games like that, but they've played in a lot of them where they've at least been able to handle and be a part of a big stage. And Rule will have this team ready. There's no question. He will play the underdog card. They'll be motivated to go at Indiana because everyone's talked about how good they've been. They're the darling of the Big Ten. And, Nebraska, if they beat Illinois, Nebraska's the darling right now. Everyone's talking about Nebraska. That one Illinois game, if they win that game, Nebraska's probably ranked about 16th right now.
So you are visibly annoyed by Indiana.
I am. Man, I got all summer. Robin talked to one beat writer, and all of a sudden, Robin became like the Indiana spokesman.
And whatever he said, played out exactly like he said. He said they had an extremely favorable schedule and a good offense. Where are they?
They're 6-0.
They're lighting people up and beating bad teams. So this is the real litmus test for them, where they're actually going to face a formidable opponent for the very first time, one that's going to challenge them on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And the best quarterback play that they've seen thus far. We'll see how that defense responds right here.
All right, Abby, what's next?
Do you think Nebraska should target their tight end?
Well, the tight end's got to get open, too. I think targeting is one thing, but getting open and separation is another. I don't look at Fedoni as a speedster. And I think anything that he's going to catch is going to be more in traffic, a physical type play. I don't look at Fedoni as Matt Harrion 03.
No.
And I think when he came, and I think when Fedoni came here pre-injuries, the thought was he would be like a Matt Harrion who was going to be a first rounder until he broke his leg. And look, Fedoni has overcome a ton, even get to this point. But yeah, I think Carter Nelson is the better question long term. Will he grow back more into a hybrid tight end role? Or will they want him to be a split in when Banks and Nayor are gone?
That's a good question. They have, one answer to that would be they have some guys waiting in the wings for when Banks and they were what we're talking about 6'4" receivers.
Keelan
So
Smith.
they have Keelan Smith and Quinn Clark and Malachi Coleman. So that might answer the question. I don't know. I think you could use Carter in a variety of ways, but they have. See, one thing I like about Rule, he seems to have a grand plan. He has answers to these questions that you have, and a big part of that is having these 6'4" guys that are waiting. They're just waiting. I mean, Quinn Clark, he can play. Malachi can play. You saw Keelan Smith in the spring game. So there's a plan. But Carter's got to be part of that plan.
Yeah, they'll get him somewhere. And I think that's the one thing. Like Carter Nelson's only playing about 1 to 3 snaps a game on offense.
That's not that.
How do you grow that to 15 to 12?
Right.
Can that be done? How do they substitute him into those packages? Because he is a horse. He could help them, but he's got to prove that he can handle what they give him too. And I'm sure that's a part of it.
The problem is they have a number of guys that they would like to get more involved. I mean, Jaron Bonner, a guy that has all the versatility in the world, he just doesn't really have a role. And then they just try this Heinrich Gardner experiment where he can do all these different things. They just don't know exactly what to do with them, it seems like.
They've got to run the ball better.
Yeah, so I mean, I think again, Sean's right. Sustaining drives and actually being on the field more to create more snaps. All of a sudden, these windows of opportunities for all these guys we're talking about start getting on.
You put Satterfield in 2nd and 3, a lot of other things look better at that.
Absolutely.
All right, next question.
What are your thoughts on the NCAA changes this week? They eliminated the national letter of intent, and then they shortened the transfer portal dates to 30 days.
So yeah, the transfer portal window, it started out 60 days back in the day. That was the initial window they came out with. They brought it down to 45. Now it's down to 30. So 20 in December, 10 in the spring. And look, that's needed. The very first year of the transfer portal, there was no window. And remember, you could just go on the portal at any point of the season, and you literally would have guys mad about a game on Saturday and be in the portal on Sunday. They've got rid of that. And I think they've tightened it up as well as they can. This letter of intent thing, guys, so I don't look at it as that big of a deal. I think it's just a document change to reflect what the new way of college football is. It's revenue sharing to pay the players. The players are going to be on revenue sharing agreements where they get paid part of that $22 million that will begin being paid next year. And about 15 million to 12 million of that will go to football. And so these documents they sign are going to outline more of these details for a player versus what the old letter of intent did before.
Do you think these new agreements are going to be more binding than an NIL or NLI because there's actual money involved?
That's good. The LOI and NIL, it's kind of hard
I
to.
don't have to say NLI anymore.
I don't know how binding they can really make them. I think one thing, though, is when you commit to a school now and sign the transfer paperwork, you can't back out of that. That's going to be one change where you remember Walter Rouse.
Yes.
Drafted by the Minnesota Vikings this year, day 2 of the draft, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Was committed to Nebraska, 1890, had a full agreement with him. He backed out of that agreement and switched to Oklahoma. Under these new rules, you're going to sign something. Walter Rouse would not have been able to back out if he had signed a document to Nebraska, which I believe he would have had to have with where that was at that point.
Yeah.
So now things like that where someone can't come in at the 9th hour and raise you when you already sign a kid. So I think that's good.
Yeah, the one thing I wonder about is the spring window. There's a
10 days
window. A lot of that, Sean, wouldn't you say that that's often just a late cash grab by players, just a kind of a last ditch effort?
It is, but I think one thing we've learned is the spring window is really dry. There's not a lot of talent in that spring football window.
Pretty slow.
And a lot of kids that are under an agreement, it's going to be hard to find an agreement better than what they have. And like the one thing though is if you are a hot commodity in the spring, you will get a lot of money.
Yes.
So if you're one of the 10 or 20, we're getting a shipment of zip lights here. All right, happy.
This is Greg in Milford. Thank you, Greg. Very good.
All right, Abby, what do we got? Another question?
How about last one?
Last question.
If you could have a lifetime supply of Zipline beer, what would you pick?
Ooh, this one right here.
Mike,
I will say, dang IPA is dang good,
I'm telling you.
but in the morning you feel it. I mean, it's a heavy, strong
Yeah,
beer.
you do more than two, you're
I had,
rolling the dice.
Listen to you guys.
I'm getting old, but the Oktoberfest beer
Ooh, high level. You haven't had the
is
new October
outstanding here.
You should see these guys on
Fest,
the road.
the fest beer, the fest beer.
You should see these guys on the road. Woo.
We know how to do it right.
But yeah,
Yes, you do.
Zipline has a couple 8%ers, and they're good for one. Don't try to go for about 3.
Don't go past.
Go for 2.
I'll go dang. It's my favorite beer in Zipline. It's one of the most high level IPAs.
It is really good. Simple and simple. You're a Zipline. Did you try an IPA yet,
I
Sip?
don't need to. I don't even know what IPA means.
I wish the crowd here could have heard Robin trying to explain to Sipple what an IPA was.
I like Bud, but I really like this. I do.
Zipline.
I'm sort of picky about my beer, and I do like this.
Grab a handful of hops.
There you go.
That's an IPA. I think someone's going to get you an IPA. I saw somebody run
That would be
inside.
fine. I'll drink.
All right. Well, round of applause for Abby Barmore.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna Linda from the 9 store is gonna step in for Abby's seat. But in the meantime, guys, let's get into our final segment here. Let's talk. We're gonna talk some Big Ten football here and kind of where this league is at the midway point. Because honestly, through 6 weeks, I think we all agree. Oh, and Simple's got an IPA here, by the way. Let's see.
Got the dang.
I see the green label.
Oh,
Green Label IPA.
That's a good one too.
Give it a sip, Sip.
Facial expression.
Yeah.
His face.
Zoom in.
This smells good.
Come on, take your pull off that, Seth.
What do you think, Sip?
Oh, that's good. It's tame.
All right.
It's tame. It's good. No, I'm not joking. I like it.
Somebody
It
bring
tastes
him a
like
margarita.
it sort of tastes like what's a grapefruit. Tastes like a grapefruit.
There you go.
Yeah.
They're stronger though.
That's good.
Drink with caution there.
Only came 5
He only gained 5 pounds. But let's we have Linda here. Linda, is it Size from
Size.
the 5-9 store, or the 9 store. I said the 5-9, the 9 store here in Fallbrook, and she graciously donated some prizes tonight, a gift basket, gave our staff some T-shirts. Linda, thank you so much for your donation. Tell us about your store.
Women is big cheap, but during Husker season, we carry a lot of men's and women's Husker clothes.
Clothes?
Yeah, clothes, accessories.
And you guys, it's like the custom, it's cool stuff. This is not like,
Boutique stuff.
look, and there you go. We got our website up here, Linda. If you look at the screen, we're showing your website here. So thank you again, Linda, for your donation tonight at Zipline here, and we're honored to be out here in Fallbrook. All right, thank you, Linda Size, for joining us out here in Fallbrook as we talk Huskers. All right, let's get into the Big Ten discussion here, guys. As we talk Big Ten, when you look at the league right now, obviously Ohio State and Oregon are going to meet this weekend. Right now, do you believe those are the 2 best teams in this conference?
What I wonder, Sean, is Ohio State easily the best team in the conference? That's what we're waiting.
We'll find out.
That's what we're going to find out Saturday. Is Oregon really in that category? I'm skeptical. It is a 3-point line though. Ohio State's favored by 3. I said on our show the other day, if Ohio State doesn't win by 13 plus, I'll be surprised. But my picks have been horrible, so don't listen too closely. But I think it's Ohio State and everybody else.
What Will Howard,
Will
is he a game manager or a championship quarterback? I think that's the question in the Big Ten, because we know what he did at the Big 12. We backed up Adrian Martinez, and he took over for Adrian Martinez. And so a lot of us here locally watched him. But Will Howard has elite receivers and elite running backs with Chip Kelly. Is that enough to bring Ohio State to the promised land?
And I guess we talked about how Indiana doesn't play anybody. Who's Ohio State play? They beat an
Nobody.
average Iowa team. They beat a below average Michigan State team and a bunch of directional schools. So I mean, like, this is their first test. And Oregon, I would have considered them one of the elite in the conference going into the season, but they have struggled out of the gates. They're still 5-0, but it's not been a pretty 5-0. So I think we are going to learn a lot about both of these teams and how they respond to this stage and really the biggest game of the Big Ten season.
By the way, we're over 1,100 viewers now here at Zipline on YouTube and live stream. So great crowd in attendance, great crowd viewing us here online. Other games of note and teams of note, USC is such a hard team to figure out. They had a chance to win at Michigan, and they fell apart with their run defense. They bounced back and they beat Wisconsin and kind of put Wisconsin into a spiral. But then they go lose at Minnesota. Now they host Penn State. This Penn State USC game is a monster game as well, because after the top two teams in this league, Oregon and Ohio State, Penn State's obviously the third level playoff team right now. I mean, USC's got a chance to salvage their season this weekend.
They do, and if they lose, then it's sort of, you're looking at kind of a disaster for Lincoln Riley. There's a lot of pressure on USC right now. I mean, USC is actually pretty easy to figure out. They went in the portal and tried to get defensive linemen and struck out. So they're not particularly strong up front. That did cost them against Michigan. They're not bad, though, on defense. They're much better with Danton Lynn as the defensive coordinator. Whole new defensive staff. Sean, they're pretty dialed in on defense now. They're just not physical enough. They fly around, but they're pretty good. On offense, they don't run the ball very well, but they're a big play team. Great receivers, quarterback that throws it down the field. They'll have to have chunk plays against Penn State. They won't be able to line up and run against them, but they'll move the ball down the field. Penn State will try to hammer away. If they get down, it's trouble. If USC can get a 14-0 lead, 17-3 lead, it's trouble for Penn State because they go way out of their comfort zone with that.
How bad do you guys feel for James Franklin? They have to drive 90 minutes to an airport to fly to this game.
Not bad. Because that's the most difficult place in America to go cover a game. Like, you're either staying in Pittsburgh or Harrisburg or driving in 2 hours and paying $700 for a Fairfield Inn.
Yeah, no, there is.
Boo-hoo, James Franklin. Boo-hoo.
But I thought it was funny this week that he was lobbying to get the airport expanded. I mean, that's a huge taxpayer level project. That's just not just
so
some
the football team can have an easier travel experience.
So we'll see.
Big game goes. I mean, this is a huge weekend if you're a Nebraska fan to watch. I mean, listen, think about it. You can watch Wisconsin Rutgers, size up Wisconsin. That's at 11 a.m. At 2:30, it's Penn State.
Iowa, Washington at 11 too.
You can size up Iowa. Penn State, USC, size up USC at 2:30, and then size up Ohio State at 6:30. I mean, it's a great scouting.
Yeah, lots to keep up on. And again, we're 11 o'clock next week at Indiana on Saturday. Husker Online postgame live. We'll do that out there as well following that game in Indiana. It'll be our third trip, guys. And are we going to hit El Toro?
Yes.
I really like the 947.
Yeah, Sybil is going to exchange Mexican restaurants for me buying prime steaks. Pretty good deal.
So I like it.
I'm like, let's go to El Toro so I can spend $40 for the staff dinner.
Yeah, I'm pushing for more expensive places than Sean.
Right, well,
147 was excellent.
It was.
It was. Thank you, Sean.
all right. Well, hey, thank you to the crowd tonight. Wonderful turnout out here in Fallbrook. And I can tell you by the turnout, our last two shows, this will not be our last live show with Zipline. So we appreciate everybody coming out, supporting the show. For our producer, Megan, back in Omaha, for Abby Barmore, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, I'm Sean Callahan. Thank you for everyone for joining us tonight here at Zipline for Husker Online Live.